Program. Our featured speaker is a brand new chamber member. She is the owner of Webbe Consulting Group and has an affiliated business called the Alternative Board. Following 20 years of operations experience leading healthcare organizations, Carol Ellisod has problem-solving strategies, improving human capital management and business strategy for multiple companies, resulting in decreased employee turnover and increased profit margins. Carol began her career as a speech-language pathologist. To foster her entrepreneurial spirit, Carol obtained an MBA from the University of Phoenix and a PhD in leadership and organizational change from Walden University. Outside of work, Carol enjoys cooking and soccer. So please welcome Carol Elassad.
I always think my introduction makes me sound so stuffy, and I'm really not stuffy at all. In my spare time, I'm also an adjunct professor for Colorado Technical University, and the reason why I do that is because I truly believe in helping people become the best that they can be, and I am all about younger generations because as an executive for organizations, many of my employees were younger, and so I needed to help them learn how to be great clinicians, how to be wonderful customer service, how to listen actively. So it has always been about developing people. So if you thought you weren't going to participate today, you're extremely wrong. So we're going to start up with everybody standing up. Just what you wanted to do today. So before I have you do jumping jacks and yoga, what we're going to do first is if you have been identified as a baby boomer, please have a seat. Now the reason why I said if you have been identified as is because my daughter, who is 32, will tell you I identify as a Gen Z. So if you identify yourself or have been identified as a Gen Xer, have a seat. Okay, so what I want to point out here is that baby boomers, and you'll see this in a slide in a minute, we are exiting the workforce at significant numbers. And so it's Gen X that has pretty much taken over business for the most part. If you identify yourself as a millennial, have a seat. Okay, if you're in high school, you're not a millennial. And actually, that's an important point because a lot of things that are being said about Gen Z is not true, but it's true about millennials. So if you are Gen Z, you're the future. So welcome, and it's nice to have you here. And this young man in the back who's not sitting down, how do you identify yourself?
He's in a category all his own.
There you go. Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you for participating. Thanks. But I really kind of think that that's important to know because we have a misnomer about where we are in terms of generations, don't we? Generations, and I have a number for you that will probably shock some of you and not others. So what is tribe? And why did I call this Nurture the Tribe? You'll know by the end of the discussion. I have a story to tell you. There is a football team in 2017, and their fan base had a huge parade in downtown, and they celebrated the perfect season. And as they were celebrating, they used words like camaraderie, affinity, this is my town, this is my team. Does anybody have any idea what football team that was? Now shout it out.
Chiefs.
It wasn't the Chiefs. The perfect season. Who had a perfect season in 2017? They might have had a perfect season, but it's not them. I love this story, and this is the reason why. It was the Cleveland Browns. Their perfect season was they lost every game that season. But their tribe had a parade for them in downtown Cleveland. So that's what tribe, to me, that's like the perfect definition of tribe. Even when you don't agree with how your team or how your group is doing, you still identify with them. Trust me, no one in that parade wanted to have their team have a perfect season on the wrong end of that spectrum. So I don't read slides, so I figure people are perfectly capable of reading. But basically, a tribe is just a social group that you identify with. Members of a church are a tribe. If you follow MLS and you are supporting Kansas City, you are part of a tribe. If you support the Kansas City Chiefs, you're part of a tribe. In some way or another, we're all tribal. But interestingly enough, this has been a term that has been applied to millennials and Gen Z regularly. And we'll talk about the reason why here in a minute. So this is an important distinction. Which one of those pictures is millennial and which one is Gen Z? Anybody want to guess?
Z is on the left, Y is on the right.
Any other guesses? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about that difference. Millennials, so Gen Y, would be on the left. And the reason why is because more than any other generation, millennials have recorded every single thing that they've done. Every single meal they go to, every single get-together with friends they go to. And primarily, they shared on Facebook, but that has changed. So whether you like him politically or not, I think Bill Maher kind of encapsulated the generations at the last election. On election night, baby boomers got the election results from TV, Gen X from Facebook, millennials from Instagram, and Gen Z from TikTok. So we all are gathering information in a very different way. The reason why it's Gen Z on the right is because they're all about influencing others and wanting to be influenced. And I have a perfect example of this. We just took in 3 young members in our family, 15, 14, and 11, due to their parents can't get their stuff together. So we took them in. And they actually came to us from the United Arab Emirates, American citizens, but their dad was in the oil industry, or still is. And when the 15-year-old came home from school after the first week, he said, "Auntie, I really need a hoodie or something because I'm freezing at school. The classrooms are cold." And I said, "Great, okay, well, let's go to Costco or Kohl's or Macy's or somewhere and grab you one." No, Auntie, there's this influencer and I want his hoodie. And he was willing to wait 6 weeks to get it. Okay, so he was willing to be cold for 6 weeks to get the item that he wanted. So this is the slide that really bothers me because I don't want to believe I'm this old. In 2030, really and truly, the boomers are out of the workforce. So, and if you look at this, it's primarily millennials that are going to be in charge by 2030. Millennials and Gen X. And so every baby boomer in here just went. So I wanted to define who the millennials are. Millennials are between 26 and 44. There are 72 million of them in the United States. That's important for marketing too, isn't it? So I just thought that I would kind of include some facts. Honest to goodness, when I said, I was sitting on the couch with my 32-year-old, and I said, can you believe that they're saying millennials check their phones 150 times a day? And honestly, she looked at me and she went, that's all? I'm like, seriously? Holy cow. My phone is my phone. Yes, I have an iPhone, but trust me, I don't want to use it as an iPhone. I just want a phone. But this generation is extremely digital, and they are extremely plugged in 24/7. If you talk to psychologists, they will tell you the primary reason for stress and for depression in millennials is because they don't unplug. Also, they're the most urban, and they have been very vocal that they want to belong. So the millennials in the room, would you agree? You want to belong to something? Studies have been pretty clear about that. They are willing to join groups. But what's even more interesting about millennials, and where they actually coincide with baby boomers, is they're extremely idealistic. Extremely idealistic. Even though they say they're stressed about stress because they're working and stressing about their car payment, they still are extremely idealistic about the future. They're very ethnically and racially diverse. When it comes to Gen Z, and this also puts a lot of fear in some people's hearts, Gen Z is going to be the last generation in the United States that is primarily Caucasian, or identify as only one ethnicity. That scares some people. But also I think that will speak to you a little bit about where Gen Z is on that political spectrum. When it comes to the large student loans, in my last corporate job where I was recruiting, my physical therapist and occupational and speech therapist wanted to come and work for me because we provided some loan forgiveness, an additional monthly sum every month to pay off student loans. They're coming out of school with $180,000 of student loans. It's not much better for Gen Z. So I'm just putting this out there because if you're having trouble recruiting professionals, this is a way to help you recruit. Either help pay for college or help pay off student loans. And before you say, well, I was a boomer, I was a Gen Xer, and I had a summer job and I paid for college, you can't do that anymore. College has become extremely expensive. It's very difficult to do that anymore. Okay, so Gen Z, our wonderful high schoolers in the back of the room, between ages of 9 and 25. Look at that number. There's 72 million Gen Zers in the United States. Now, millennials talk about work-life balance, and they'll say that that's something that they want. But when it comes to Gen Z, they will choose a company over how many hours a week that they will work. And if you say to them, our expectation is 50 to 55 hours a week, you are not going to be able to hire a Gen Z. So us boomers and many of us in Gen X, we, if our jobs required 65 hours a week, we did it. That's not going to happen anymore. So I was on LinkedIn, and one of the people that I'm connected with put a survey out there. What is it that you think people want in the workplace from their leader? Do they want transparency? Do they want empathy? And I don't remember what the third one was. Those are the first two that come to my mind. Or is it something different? The primary answer was empathy, which was surprising to me. And boy, that's when the comments started. because they're like, holy cow, if this is where the workforce is, there is no way we are going to be able to have a workforce. I think it's just a different way of thinking about how you handle the generations. So when I lived in Central Texas and I was a head of the therapy division, I purposefully set up my staffing in this way for 2 reasons. So if you're not familiar with acute care hospitals, their whole goal is to get you out the door. They admit you and then they're working on discharge from the minute you come in. And the reason why is because they make more money when they can push you out the door quicker. Well, part of that is a lot of times what's called discharge planning. And the therapy world is a part of that discharge planning. Because based on your evaluations from physical therapy and occupational and speech therapy, it depends on where you go when you're discharged. You're either going to go to an inpatient rehabilitation, a skilled nursing facility, or home health, or sometimes they even recommend long-term care, depending upon the situation. The only people I could recruit in Central Texas was people from Boston, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, which is a long ways away from Central Texas. So I set my schedule up. I had one schedule. Half of my team worked Sunday through Wednesday. The other half of my schedule worked Wednesday through Saturday. And that is because I was hiring millennials. And they want information. And they want flexibility. So my schedules were 4-10. They knew they may not always get 40 hours every week, but they knew they were going to be free an extra day in the week. You know what, guys, they didn't take that day off. They all worked in home health or other areas because they were trying to pay off student loans. This is a generation millennials will work. So for as many times as you see an article that says a millennial won't work, think about what your millennial will do for you if you provide them with a flexible schedule. Now, the other thing I allowed them to do was switch their schedules. So they could, in effect, work 7 days in a row, but then be off for an entire week, and they never had to take PTO to do it. So when I think of the results where they were talking about empathy, I think what they were really talking about is they were wanting leaders that understand that their lifestyle may be a little bit different. And their lifestyle is different because the millennials who are choosing to have children are so focused on family, it's almost scary how focused they are on their children. They want to be a part of their lives and they want to do a great job. So I'm all about millennials. I really am, because I have never been burned by one of my employees who is a millennial. So, and when it comes to that idea that millennials feel that they are entitled, I'm going to throw it out there. Go back and read about Gen X and baby boomers. They have more of that entitlement mentality than millennials do. So Gen Z is very much on that same track. So how does the Chamber of Commerce fit in? So if you were reading the slides as I was going through, you saw words like engagement, data-driven, connected, looking for something to be a part of, all of those different things. So both generations are very experience-driven. If they can experience something, they're more likely to embrace it. But the other thing is that they love to learn, and they will actively seek information. They are both extremely socially responsible. If you read some of the items on Gen Z and where they feel and how they feel about climate change and other things, they are not on the same page as any other generation on the planet, because they are aware that they are going to be the ones that are going to take the brunt of climate change. It's going to change our world in many other ways than just the climate. They're very entrepreneurial in spirit. They want to be part of a group, but they also want to have some say-so in how their lives are going to run and how their businesses are going to run. They want to make a difference. They are very career-driven, both generations. You may not believe it, but if you're thinking as a baby boomer or a Gen X, you haven't plugged into your millennial employees if you don't believe that's true. Set are information speakers. They both want work-life balance. Both are involved. They want to be involved in the community. They're looking for stuff to do in the community. When I offered up volunteerism and the time to be a volunteer up to my employees in my last 3 corporate positions, my millennials were the first ones to stand up and say yes. They're willing to give up their time to causes that they deem to be beneficial to society at large. And it may not be what you're interested in. If it's anything to do with children and food security, they're all in, just as an FYI. Both are engaged. If they're engaged, they will stay with you as an employer. If you don't keep them engaged, they will not. Some can say that about baby boomers and Gen X as well. Gen Z wants to be influenced, and they want to be influencers. So how does that relate to the chamber? And I took, I had this slide first. So why is that number important, 64.5? 72 million millennials, 72 million Gen Zers. Globally, they're 64.5% of the global population, and in the United States as well. So I took this right off of the Chamber's website, Independent Chamber's website. You're deeply rooted in the community. Did you see the slide on Gen Z that said that they want, that meme, that said that they want employers to be in there to build their businesses in their community? So community is very important to them where they live. So you're deeply rooted in the community. You provide education. So this is what the Chamber of Commerce can do, because you get to influence stability, and the Independence Chamber. I thought the most striking thing that I learned about Gen Zers is that they are less likely to drop out of high school. They seem to understand the importance of formal education and what form that takes, but that doesn't necessarily mean college. They are into education in any way possible. They'll complete high school. It doesn't mean they'll go to college. You have to make college appealing to them. But many Gen Zers are saying the way college has been created does not really provide the effective learning for the job market of the future. And that's where you can influence them too as business owners. All right, thank you so much.